Aha.
Good day.
Hello, how are you this sunny morning?
I'm great. What about you?
I'm looking out the window and saying, this is unusual, but I love it.
Yeah, it's very unusual. I'm speaking today to Helga Guderley. Helga is involved with the Healthy Forest Coalition, has been for a number of years, and she spoke with our Thursday evening gathering last week or 2 weeks ago called Spiritually Connected Through Creation. So Helga and I are going to have a conversation this morning. And before we begin, I'd like to say, my name is Marian Lucas Jeffries, and I coordinate the uh, Environment Network for the Anglican Diocese of Nova Scotia and Prince Edward Island. Helga, like I say, is connected to the Healthy Forest Coalition. She has a wonderful background. She has a PhD in comparative physiology, and she taught in the biology department of Laval University. Now, Helga now lives in Bootlier's Point, and she moved there in 2010. So I'd like to welcome you again, Helga, and I want to say that I'm so glad that you agreed to our conversation today. Um, like I said, you live in Boutlier's Point. It's a really beautiful part of the world. And so my first question really is, how has that impacted your commitment to care for creation?
My understanding of what makes me a better person was growing while I was living in Quebec. And it became quite clear to me that the best parts of each day were the parts that I could spend outside, the parts that I could spend in nature, the parts that I could spend feeling life and air and growth around
Hmm.
me. And so when I moved to Nova Scotia, we came here because my husband's from Bridgewater. And so you have to come here rather than somewhere else. And retiring in Quebec didn't seem the best thing to do for us in terms of many reasons. So we moved, we came along the shore and getting closer and closer to Halifax and found this lovely area, this piece of land that has forest and gardens. It had an old house that wasn't the best, but I have a view over the little inlet here to a nice forested stand. And there was the rails to trails that runs along the shore and along the base of this forested stand. And it was wonderful. And so we embarked upon building this passive solar home, trying to be ecologically efficient and all. And after we got that done, I started meeting these friends that told me about efforts to have a community forest in the former Mersey lands that are just north of us, north of the 103, stretching across a lot of the province. So I got involved with these people and started discussing them. And then I realized that there was this large clear cut that was being planned for just across the way, and the clear cut was supposed to come right down to the rails to trails. And I thought, no, they can't do that. Nobody's going to want to ride their bikes along here. We're trying to turn this into an international tourist destination. The Rum Runners Trail was in the works. And I said, they're not going to just do that, just bring the logs down to the trail and then drive them out. So I put up a petition against that. And I got a letter writing campaign happening here in Bootlers Point and around the bay. And the response was lovely of the population. They all really thought it was a ridiculous thing. And they've been fighting development along this area for quite a while with the interchange and all sorts of things where the government just seems to march on with their plans and not listen to what people want. So in this case, they did listen a bit.
Uh-huh.
They changed the harvest plans. They put a couple cut blocks onto delayed harvest. I was later told that those are potential moose habitat, so that they wouldn't ever be cut, but they had been proposed. So a lot of this stuff, was my introduction into the Department then of Natural Resources. And I could see it was a very top-down run department. A former Mersey Bowater executive is the head civil servant in the department now of lands and not forests, but forestry.
Clear.
So that was my beginning of being in this beautiful place and seeing that the government didn't seem to care, that they would desecrate the view plane for St. Margaret's Bay. I have friends who live on the other side of the bay. And they look across and they see this big strip that's been clear cut. So it became really apparent to me that I had to step up as a citizen to express my concerns about how our land is being treated. And that was my first step into this whole question of acting in a civic society, acting, expressing my views and my concerns. And so I I I I got into it that way. And it was a lot due to my love of this physical place that we're at, but also my realization that people actually have to stand up for it. The government, our elected officials don't necessarily do that. So we have to stand up. I'm not saying there aren't people that do. There are wonderful people in the government. The Department of Environment has some excellent people working in the Department of Lands and Forestry as well, has very good people that probably got into working where they do because they love forests.
Right.
But then they're in a situation where they're being told by their superiors that they have to act in a certain way. So yeah, that's a beginning.
Mhm.
You want me to go on with the next petition?
Well, uh, okay. Yes, please.
Okay, because then I saw that petition seemed to work a little bit. I had 6,000 signatures on that first petition. So I thought, and this may be 2014, 2015. I forget the exact dates when I did this, but then I kept hearing all this stuff about biomass. And I'm a biologist. I know what biomass really is. Biomass is the total mass of something living in an area. So if you have a square of your garden, you can calculate how much biomass is in it. You can have dry biomass, wet biomass. But what were they meaning with biomass burning? And then I started realizing what they meant is that they would clear a whole area and take everything and burn it. And then this stuff was being used to generate electricity. So we had some very big burners in the province. There was the one at Port Hawkesbury Paper that was on a kind of a must run. It had to run 24/7,
Mm-hmm.
which is ridiculous, even if it wasn't needed. There was one down in Liverpool. There's one at Hefner. There's one at Northern Pulp had one as well. So there were all these biomass generators around. So then I decided this was stupid because the underlying economics are based on a flawed assumption that trees grow back fast enough to make biomass ecologically more sound than burning coal. So we take a step backward. Nova Scotia has this huge reliance on coal for energy generation. We've been treated specially by the federal laws so that we can use coal longer than other parts of the country. But our supply of renewables seem to be hard to get at. So hydro, the little hydro plants that we had around the province, most of them were shut down. Wind is sort of picking up. Solar since then has been moving along nicely. But the easiest, quickest way to use existing infrastructure was to turn it to biomass.
Oh.
And they said biomass is greener than coal because trees grow back. What they neglected, and I knew at that point, was that trees in Nova Scotia grow back very slowly, and climate change is happening much faster than that.
Mm-hmm.
So I put up a petition saying that we should stop using biomass for power generation. I addressed it to Premier McNeil.
Yep.
And it was quite popular. One night, I remember I went to the symphony. When I went in, it was like at 10,000 signatures. I came out, it was to 20. I said, what?
Wow.
This is going viral. It had just really exploded. And so many of the people that had been working hard trying to get more sound forestry principles into the way that Nova Scotia deals with its forests were encouraged by that outturn. In the end, that petition got 30,000 signatures. Bruce McKinnon, our wonderful cartoonist, made a great cartoon showing how inefficient biomass use for power generation is.
Great.
And having that extra boost brought together this meeting, I'll never forget it. People from across the province drove up to Enfield area, and we found a room in a Sobeys, I think it was, and we had this meeting. It was the first meeting of what became the Healthy Forest Coalition. It grew out of this enthusiasm that was generated by that petition. And
Ah,
so there was Paul Prost, Francis Anderson, Ann Mills, Bob Bancroft, Donna Crossland, a range of people around that table. It was so uplifting. It was just wonderful. Yeah, Tom Miller was there. It was really cool. That was just, and that's where the Healthy Forest Coalition arose
okay.
in
So
in
that's how you
response to my petition.
that's how you wow, that's how you got involved. And so tell us a little bit more about the coalition itself.
So the coalition is a coalition. It's not an organization. We don't have there's this office that you have to send in your all your documents to, who your registered offices are and all that kind of stuff if you're a registered group. We don't have a president, don't have a vice president, a treasurer, or a secretary. We do have a coordinator whom we kind of arm twist to be in there. But our current coordinator is so amazing. He's just fantastic. It's Mike Lancaster,
Mhm.
who also his paid job is being a steward for the of the McCoos and Troop Islands here in St. Margaret's Bay, and also of the Bluff Trail. He's become amazingly good at setting up stewardship programs for different wild wilderness areas.
Great.
So we have a coordinator. I'm the information officer, so I send out information to members on a monthly basis. And um, we have someone who looks after finances. We do have a donate button on our website. So it's a coalition of different organizations that I'm really happy to say the DEN is going to be part of. So
Yeah.
that's and it's loose that way. But we come together. We have a kind of a core group of people that work directly. For example, I suspect most people will have heard of the lawsuits against the province for not respecting their Species at Risk Act.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
two of our members are, the one is Bob Bancroft, the other is Jamie Simpson. Jamie's the lawyer, and
Hmm.
he championed this case as well as the one about Owl's Head. So we have some very qualified, very dedicated people that are fortunately working together, and I think we all get a kind of a boost from this. And in
Right.
this COVID era, it's been interesting because we actually meet by Zoom, and so we actually get more people because people are all over the province, right? We have, otherwise they'd have to drive like 3 hours to get to a meeting and then drive again, and so it's complicated, but that is actually a bit of an advantage to this Zooming era, is that we can get together at least virtually quite easily. So that's how it came about.
Yeah. Yes, and using the internet for meetings certainly has allowed us to reduce our fossil fuel consumption as we're
Right.
going to
Yeah.
meetings and driving across the province and that sort of thing. It also, I think, for unstructured groups like the Environment Network, with the diocese and with the Healthy Forest Coalition, because we're so unstructured, it helps us retain that, yet continue to grow and be effective in what we're doing.
Mhm.
And so, you've really talked about biomass. Are there any, and you've now talked about species at risk too. Uh, what are there other important forestry issues facing Nova Scotians at this time? Um,
I would say that, well, first off, it's all interconnected. The the use of biomass for power generation arose partly because of the need for converting coal-based generators into other ones, into something that would be greener in theory. But it also arose from the fact that people that are logging end up having a range. If they clear cut, they have a range of things that they bring out of the forest. Even if they log ecologically and leave a lot of the canopy and only create sort of some open areas in the forest that would allow the regeneration of the multi-species forest,
mhm.
there are going to be trees that can't be turned into logs.
Right.
Trees that can't be turned into lumber.
Oh, yeah.
There's
Okay.
going to be stuff that's too small for a mill to turn into a usable product. So that product is a very good um, very good end use of that product is power generation, or is biomass burning,
Yeah.
to start with. So these local biomass heating projects are a reasonable use, especially if the wood that's used for those heating projects is sourced fairly locally and isn't driven 500 kilometers from the other end of the province to get to this biomass burning or heating facility. So it's all very interconnected. So if we want to support a forestry industry around the province, you have to provide markets for the different types of wood. And so some use of biomass is generated. Also, is not generated, but is supported. And also the use of sawmill waste. That makes sense. But then when you turn from a small level use, which is the way that it was sold to Nova Scotians, to all of a sudden doing all your harvesting so that you just support the production of chips, the production, the shipping of small wood to a biomass burner, that defeats that purpose. And so I said it's all connected. Supporting species at risk means maintaining habitat. Maintaining habitat means not clear cutting, not having even age treatments. Even age treatments means that what grows back is all the same size
Uh-huh.
and pretty much the same species, because the ones that grow back quickly are fir and spruce. So if you have even age treatments, then you end up with a bit of a lawn, but it's not the native forest that should be here. So if you do uneven age treatments, you facilitate the growth of a range of hardwoods as well as softwoods. And so you have the mixed Acadian forest that results. That's what our wildlife needs. And that's also what our planet needs, because if you maintain the forest, you maintain the carbon, not only in the trees, but in the soil. And I don't think the balance has been worked out for all forest types all across the board. But I've seen estimates that 60% of the carbon in a forest is in the soil. 60% is in the soil. So if you cut off everything up above by a clear cut or a variable retention where 10% to 30% of the trees are retained is a clear cut. They have all these new names because we said stop clear cutting. So now they have different names for the same kinds of cuts. Very ingenious, but it doesn't really pull the wool over your eyes when you drive past it and realize there's nothing left. So you lose not only the carbon that's fixed up above, but the carbon that's in the soil because it comes out when everything dies.
Yeah. And
So,
so, I mean,
oh,
there are a
sorry.
number of changes, and I think, there's been a thought that change means hardship, or there's some kind of a burden, or there's a disadvantage to it. But really, what I'm hearing you say is that there is a huge advantage to change the changes that are needed to have healthy forests, to have a healthier economy, because if we have a healthier planet, that it's easier to do that.
Mm.
So how might ordinary people, be involved in affecting that change?
Well, I think the best way is to associate with groups that you think are working towards that aim. One of the things I found incredibly uplifting when I moved to Nova Scotia was the Ecology Action Centre. They have, over a long history now, been very active at mobilizing people for important causes. Like one of the recent things they did, I thought was quite impressive. There was this decision by council in Halifax that was going to impact the way that the Blue Mountain Birch Coves Lake Park or wilderness area could actually become a reality. In fact, it was going to make it not become a reality if the staff report had been accepted by the councillors. But
Mhm.
we had a really quick burst of, let your counselor know you want
Yeah.
this park to become a reality, and they were flooded by the
Hmm.
public, and then they followed the public's will rather than following the staff report. So, not that the staff were poorly motivated, they were worried about budgetary considerations. But still the fact that the EAC was able to mobilize people to respond
Right.
just talks to the power of citizens groups. So each area, I'm aware now of areas all around the province where there are Facebook groups or there are actual groups that really physically meet that are working to support their area and to I'm impressed by the number of people that have come together to save forests. Like if you go in the Annapolis Valley area, there are people who fund crowdsourced funding to buy land so that it wouldn't get logged. And I mean, all these people just send in 50, $20, whatever, and then you get 50K together and you buy a piece of land that would have been clear cut. And that's happened. And there's all these crowdfunding programs to support the lawsuits that are going on about Owl's Head, about the species at risk.
Yep.
There's a lot of actions like that, and that has been facilitated by social media. But sometimes it's better to be with real people rather than just a Facebook page. So there are associations that are always happy to have more energy. And if people are worried about what's happening around them, well, find others that are.
Yeah.
Yuval, sorry, I always get his name wrong. Yuval Noah Harari, who's a great thinker. I've read several of his books and he's just fantastic. He says that. Jane Goodall says that. There's a lot of very bright people who say that. So I'm just joining the chorus. I've definitely been stimulated by working with others that are trying to improve things. It's uplifting. It's uplifting when you see these people and you can just, and they're uplifted by the fact that you're uplifted. So everybody sort of goes a little higher together, which is pretty cool.
And those are the things that give us hope, aren't they?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. People give us hope.
Yes. And so I get a sense of, like, I just love your positive energy. It's, and it puts such a positive spin on the whole thing, you know. It's not just about the doom and gloom, but it's about the possibilities, the things we can do, the way we can live out that call to care for creation, the way we can come together and the way we get strength together. And so that's why I want to thank you for all the things that you do.
Right, thank you.
It's incredible. We first met, I guess, in church on a Sunday morning in French Village.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, it's just been wonderful getting to know you better over the last few years.
And I love what you're doing. I think it's really cool. I'm really impressed.
Together. We do it together, don't we? And
Yes.
so we would encourage people to do that together as well, to join us in this common cause, and just make sure that we have a better recovery from the pandemic than not a return to normal, but a better world in the end. So thank you very much for your time today.
It was
And
a pleasure.
we will absolutely be in touch.
Yes.